Babylon is directed by Damien Chazelle. It stars Brad Pitt, Margot Robbie, Diego Calva and Tobey Maguire. And in Chazelle's new movie, several ambitious dreamers tried to make it big in Hollywood in the 1920s. Now I'm counting this as a 2023 movie only because it was released late here, literally last Friday, so I went and saw it yesterday and I can confirm that this movie should not be bombing. This movie was great. This movie is pretty much a love letter to movies as a whole. We get to see the pretty much the origins of the first real movies back in the 1920s, how people reacted when sound came into the mix with movies. I really like that we see that nice little development there. And this movie does really well at capturing the time period. Everything looks like it's come straight out of that period, out of the 1920s. Everything looks so natural. The costumes, the set designs, the way they used to film things, the movie props, it just looked really good. It made you invested in this time. But of course, this wouldn't be a good story without some good characters. And I think, for the most part, there are some interesting characters. I'll get into a few later in the negatives, but Margot Robbie and Brad Pitt play characters who have similar journeys, have similar lessons. And I like how they juxtapose each other. One of them accepts it, one of them, small spoiler, one of them kills himself because of it. But this movie also delves into racism and how homosexual people were treated back in the 1920s. There's one character who's lesbian and she's not treated right. She's been kicked off movie sets just because of her sexuality. So this movie does have some nice concepts there. And this movie is pretty much a message saying, just because your career is dwindling does not mean that your work will be looked after for years. Brad Pitt and Margot Robbie's characters, they are pretty much the main actors, really, if you understand. If it wasn't for these people, we wouldn't have had movies like Avatar, like these technical wonders, like Star Wars in the 70s. We wouldn't have had that if it wasn't for these people. And this movie pretty much appreciates them, really. Telling them, what these have done is significant. Yeah, they may have done illegal stuff. Yes, they may have been taking drugs and having really weird sex with people. But you can't deny their importance. But it's amazing how all these people handle fame in the movie industry. As I said, two actors learn the lessons in different ways. One has to deal with racism. One has to deal with being denied because she's a lesbian. The other is trying to aspire to be in this film industry. He looks up to these people. He befriends two of them. It's some really compelling stuff there. But these characters would not have worked if it wasn't for some fantastic performances. Margot Robbie and Brad Pitt kill it in this film. It's a crime. It's a crime that Margot Robbie hasn't been nominated for an Oscar or even any other award. I thought she was great in this movie. And can I just say, the soundtrack, wow. Justin Hurwitz, take a bow. His soundtrack was absolutely amazing. It was that good that I downloaded a few tunes off Spotify and I listened to them on the way home. The music in this just made me want to bounce around. And the main genre in this movie is jazz. And it fits the time period because back in the 1920s, that was kind of the big genre back then. So it fits this movie really well. And boy, it's just danceable. It's great. You could have a good time with it. And I don't think it's any surprise if you're a Damien Chazelle fan that the direction is flawless. Damien Chazelle knows how to direct a movie and make it look incredible. And it shines again here. This movie, I guess a lot of the budget went towards the big party scenes, all the extras, all the CGI. Even though there isn't that much CGI, but for what was needed, a lot of work was there. So I'm guessing all the budget went to that. And it's amazing that he managed to get this film to look so good, so expensive, visually beautiful. I could turn off the sound and just look at the visuals and still be enthralled by it. But this movie does have some problems. I'm not saying it's flawless. There is one character who, a small spoiler, but he's a black man and he has to deal with racism. And even though he's getting more richer, more popular, he still has to deal with this discrimination. Same with the woman who is lesbian in this. She has to deal with that too. And there could be some really interesting ideas. And for the most part, I was very interested in them. But about 2 hours in, or about just under 2 hours in, they're just forgotten about until the end. And even one of the characters, I struggle to say to the end because it's just resolved like that. No proper build up or anything. And that just really annoyed me. If there was more development, I reckon I could have connected to these characters more. And that just solidified that maybe this movie was doing a bit too much sometimes. And finally, I forgot to say that the film's pacing is fine. Does not feel like 3 hours, but I will say a couple of scenes dragged on a little too long. I know I would have cut out a minute or two out of some scenes because some of them just didn't really need to be there that long. Even though they were fun, a lot funny. I don't know, just shorten them down a bit, I'd say. That'll make the pacing a little bit better. Not saying the pacing was bad, but, it could have made the film feel a lot more shorter than it did. But overall, Babylon was great. I can't believe this movie's flopping. It's basically a love letter to the old stars and showing how their work has impacted films today. It's helmed by some fantastic performances, some great characters, albeit underused characters. The music is danceable. I forgot to mention the humour, but the humour is so funny. There's plenty of times where I laughed out loud. And also some flawless Damien Chazelle directing. It's a real shame that this movie's flopping, because I feel this movie deserves a lot more respect, a lot more money. And if you haven't seen it, I would highly suggest going to see it, because it's a love letter to movies, and you'll have a fun time with it. Don't be turned around by the 3-hour runtime. It doesn't feel like that, even though a couple of scenes do drag. So please, watch Babylon when you can, if you can. I'm going to give it an 8.5 out of 10. I really love this movie. Please, go and watch it. You'll thank me later. But guys, that is it for the end of this review. Next time is going to be a little special review. Seeing as there's an upcoming film called The Fabelmans coming out, I thought I'd do a little special review just to highlight why Steven Spielberg is my favourite director and why I cannot wait for this film. But I hope you all enjoyed this video, guys. Make sure to leave your thoughts on Babylon in the comments. I'd love to hear them. Have a good day, and see you later.